I'm Nick Westergaard, and this is On Brand, helping you tell your story. My guest this week is Dave Kaufman. Dave Kaufman is Senior Director, Global Marketing of MR, VR, and Metaverse at Meta within the Reality Labs division. He leads global marketing efforts for MetaQuest, Horizon Worlds, and Oculus Studios. Before joining Meta, Dave headed up marketing at Halo Neuroscience, led brand strategy at the United States Digital Service, founded by President Barack Obama, and worked in product marketing at Google. He's earned recognition from Ad Age's 40 Under 40 list and honors at Cannes Lions, Clio, and The One Show. A graduate of Cornell University, Dave is now based in San Francisco. My interview with Dave Kaufman is coming right up. But first, Dave Kaufman, welcome to On Brand.
Thanks so much. Excited to be here.
I'm excited to chat. Do you ever say global marketing for the metaverse at Meta and have it feel a little meta on your end?
It always feels meta. I usually say marketing at Reality Labs to keep it as concise as possible.
Awesome. So to keep with that concision, what's the best way, the maybe home at Thanksgiving way of explaining what all falls into your scope? Because I think people understand a lot about where you work, but in terms of what it is that you do there.
Yeah, I'm fortunate to work on a lot of the things that I think are both at the center of what we're building at Meta, but also quite a bit of fun as well. So I spend my time leading everything global marketing for MetaQuest, our mixed reality headsets, which are a big part of what we've been working on across Reality Labs and the vision of the metaverse. I work on all of the content for mixed reality, our big bet on Horizon and Horizon OS, which is our operating system to enable third parties to build mixed reality headsets as well, and get to do this across the consumer businesses and our enterprise business as well. So, frankly, it's a space that I've always been interested in. So there are days where I have to remind myself that I'm getting to work on everything that I wanted to, as recently as 5-10 years ago.
That's amazing. So, with all of that, do you have go-to definitions for the uninitiated on metaverse, VR, MR, mixed reality? Is there a quick handle for grabbing onto each of those
Yeah.
different ideas?
Yeah, I'll tackle virtual reality versus mixed reality very quickly, or first, because it's relatively straightforward. Uh, Virtual reality is technology that essentially makes it feel like you are somewhere you are not. So if you put on a MetaQuest headset and enter a VR experience, it might feel like you are sitting courtside at Madison Square Garden or on a spaceship that's going around the moon. Like you might be sitting in a studio apartment, but you feel like you are somewhere else and you are fully immersed in that experience. Mixed reality and the headset or Quest enables you to do both. Mixed reality blends the digital into your physical space. So, what I mean by that is if I'm using a mixed reality experience on Quest, I still see my surroundings. I see my living room. I see my dog walking by, but I can blend digital objects into that. So, I can play a game where a spaceship blasts through my wall and I actually see my apartment wall cracking before it lands on my coffee table. One of my key use cases, I'm an avid movie watcher, is I feel like I have an IMAX in my apartment now because I can still see what's going on around me. I can see what's happening, but I also have a 100-foot movie screen that's projected in front of me while I still see my environment. So it's essentially tuning up the degrees of immersiveness is how I think about VR versus MR. Um, Metaverse, there's a lot that's been written and a lot of different takes on it. The shorthand for me is it's the future of the internet. So if you think about the internet today, it's experienced on flat surfaces and it's something you look at. And in the future, it is something that will become more personal, more embodied, and something that you can actually feel immersively. So if you think about the progression of technology over time, the progression of the internet, we went from text to pictures to videos and so on. The internet has become richer. And the devices we've used to access the internet have progressed from PCs to laptops to phones to tablets to VR headsets. The devices have become much more personal and much more immersive. So the combination of those two things means, you know, the internet today, if your favorite artist is playing in Japan, you might be able to watch, and you live in San Francisco, you might be able to watch a live stream with the metaverse and VR and MR. Instead of just watching something on a flat screen, you might be able to go there and feel like you're there and attend it with friends and feel a sense of presence. So that's how I think about those technologies. The key to me, though, is as a marketer, we have to land how that feels, the emotion of it, and what it means. I actually dislike using those terms at all in our marketing because it's a I don't get the podcast opportunity to stand next to our billboard and say, "Let me explain to you what each of these terms mean."
So I think that's a great segue because as you know the struggle of defining them for people, how do you build brands in categories in a lot of ways that are still being defined?
Yeah. Uh, there are a couple things. The biggest thing for me is, and I talk about this a lot, it's probably a theme I'll hit on a lot today. I think marketers are unique in that they continually try and reject anything from the past and just say the old ways don't work anywhere. There are the new ways. So it's not a particularly sexy answer, but the first way of like that I focus on building brand for new categories and undefined technologies is making sure we really understand the basics of brand strategy. So are we starting with diagnosis first and understanding the market and the customer and the past? Do we then move on to strategy? Then do we move on to tactic? Like, I know I'm just describing basic brand strategy, but I can't tell you how frustrating I find it when marketers in tech categories just say, well, we're working on something completely innovative. None of that matters anymore. Um, the second thing, though, is which I think we layer on quite a bit on, is we do a lot of testing. And I don't just mean focus group testing to get quantitative assessment of what we're doing, or creative testing for the sake of it, but we use our own tools, so the meta platforms, Facebook, Instagram, etc., religiously to learn about how people perceive the new things that we're building. So instead of creating, 5 direct response ads and shipping them out, like we'll create thousands of variations to learn not just about like what resonates from an advertising perspective, but like what use cases are appealing, what framing of the technology is most resonant with people, and then doubling down on the ones that work. So really that marriage of leveraging the meta tools that we have at our
Yeah.
disposal, plus making sure we're grounded in the actual basics and like what I'll call like the laws of good brand strategy is an important dual relationship to me.
Well, when I'm talking with small, scrappy marketers, I always say that when it comes to getting the kind of consumer insights that you're talking about, that you have tools that you can. It's easier than ever to check in to ask people, but that's nothing compared to the tools that you just mentioned in terms of your. Being housed within the Meta family of companies as well.
Yeah, 100%.
So, as we talk about strategy, you've used kind of some in defining those the various terms, products, ideas. You've used kind of little micro doses of story. What role does storytelling play in building brands, communicating new products, new needs?
I think it's essentially what separates good marketing from bad marketing today, or it's one of the things that does. So there is a lot of research, especially over the last decade. A lot of it comes from Les Bennett and Peter Field out of the UK. But if you haven't read their works, like the long and the short of it, like these are things that I consider must reads because it actually brings data to what I'd call nebulous terms like storytelling and emotion. But two key pieces of data that have stood out to me from their research is one, the importance of building external marketing work or advertising work that's grounded in emotion. And the second is building for the long term and like building sustainable work that lasts for 3, 4, 5, 10 years. So across every dimension, work that is emotion based or strikes an emotional chord and continues on and on for years at a time is the most performant. But despite knowing that, marketers more than ever are shipping rational work. So if you see television ads today, it is a lot of voiceover, quick cuts, listing specs, because that's what can be sold through. And it's essentially like no one gets fired for listing the benefits of their product. So to me, like storytelling is essentially what separates the good from the bad right now. It is very rare today, even I'd say compared to 15 years ago, that someone who doesn't work in the field will send you an email and be like, "Have you seen this ad? This was hilarious." Or, "Wow, this really made," like, it doesn't happen as much. So when I think about, great campaigns of, whatever, the last 15 years, so things like should have gone to Specsavers in the UK, or the famous Economist ads, or like the Domino's pizza turnaround, like each of these had a degree of like cleverness and emotion and storytelling. It wasn't simply listing speeds and feeds. And that to me is something we try and weave into everything we do, especially knowing we're selling, complicated technology that people haven't seen before.
So we've talked about selling complicated technology, building new brands. When it comes to brands in the metaverse, how should brand builders listening start to think about how their brand may be a part of what's going on?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is experimentation at this phase and like finding the right ways and places to show up. So on our own platforms, we've seen brands like the NBA, who's a close partner of ours, build really engaging experiences in Horizon, our world building platform, what we really consider to be the future of how people connect in social ways. Uh, that NBA experience is a great example of them starting with dipping their toes in the water, seeing traction, and now us really having this virtual experience where you can watch games with friends or fans who might be thousands of miles away, but feeling like you're actually there. So like that degree of experimentation, starting small and seeing what resonates is great. Similarly, like I think Roblox, there are a lot of brands who have done a fantastic job integrating, avatar outfits and emotes and worlds into that platform as well. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. Again, as long as it's grounded in like clear goal, clear strategy. Even as someone with metaverse in my title, like I find it quite, I'll be blunt. Like I roll my eyes when I see the headline in Ad Age, which is like X brand is building blank in the meta as the first blank in the metaverse, and it's kind of like that's a tactic, and it's an Ad Age headline that's not going to drive business results.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because it seems like we hear about a lot of that, and it's runs the risk of almost producing more of that, of doing the kind of the metaverse headline Mad Libs, kind of like you just walked us through, instead of, I mean, what you're talking about, I mean, as new as what we're talking about is, it's really grounding it in strategy and measurable objectives for the business.
Yeah, I mean, I become a broken record on this, or if I'm on podcasts or speaking at an event, I just talk so much about understanding the basics and like, does your head of marketing know the difference between David Ogilvy and David Bowie? There's just this sense of, you don't need to learn anything about marketing, just like throw creative tactics out, and that's the way. So I personally really look for people who are deep in strategy before getting into execution, and I'm happy to say that about the metaverse as well. I don't think it's any, it's obviously very new and very different from a tactic of 10, 15, 50 years ago, but the underpinning of why you do something still has to actually be connected to a goal. I think that sounds obvious. I don't think that's always how we as marketers treat new opportunities.
You mentioned Horizon Worlds previously and talking about it in terms of from a position of leadership. What's your vision as you're building this brand that is evolving rapidly?
Horizon to us is really the future of social. And it plays into this idea I hit on with the metaverse of we interact today relatively unnaturally on the internet, which is through 2D screens, flat surfaces, text, etc. I mean, even you and I are not sitting in the same room, and it's great to do this, but it would feel very different if we were sitting in the same, in the same space. Nothing replaces human connection and being together in the same room, but nor should anything. But we believe that technology can help deliver a better sense of presence, whether that's feeling a sense of embodiment, meaning like you feel like you're in a place that you're not, or like you feel like you are in a place able to look someone in the eyes and spend meaningful time with them. I keep saying, even if you're thousands of miles apart. So, big picture, that's really the platform we're trying to build for Horizon is how do we take distance and make it feel much smaller? But how do we take these moments, things like attending a concert or a sports event or playing a game, and make them feel much bigger than they do on the 2D internet because you feel like you're actually there together?
Is there ever any friction with talking about Horizon as the future of social and looking at, within the Meta family of companies that very much the today of social is Facebook, Instagram, etc.?
I think they all complement each other quite well. One of the things I think we've done well is we have different solutions for different needs and different moments in time, or even different moments in the day. So I don't think Horizon's sense of presence in any way competes or really renders the existing platforms, which are obviously highly successful and integral to people's lives, as an afterthought. I think it's both, how do we build a platform that also gives you this option of presence and embodiment, are really the words I keep coming back to, but also how do they interact in the future, is something that becomes interesting. So today, I keep using the example of a concert. Just, I guess, music is top of mind for me. But if I wanted to send you a concert clip today on Instagram, like I can DM it and you and I can go back and forth with that. But what does it look like as Instagram and Horizon get closer, where I see a post in my Instagram feed that my favorite artist had this cool concert and I actually want to go check it out with Nick? Like, then we jump into Horizon. So I think they all play into one another versus it being, you know, one platform is the past and one is the future. It's more, how do they grow and intersect together?
So you're saying that when my wife sent me the clip of Elton John at the Chapel Roan concert singing Pink Pony Club, that I could have been there on stage via the new way of sending it?
There you go. I mean, we had a great concert back in December with Sabrina Carpenter in Quest. And we'll have a bunch more this year. And it's things like that where people put on a Quest and enter Horizon, and it's really their, like, oh my god moment of, I really feel like I'm there. So we're just scratching the surface, and excited, obviously, for wherever the stuff is going to keep going.
So we've been talking a lot about the future. I want to rewind and talk about the past for a bit. You were part of the brand strategy at the U.S. Digital Service, and asked you to define everything else. What is the U.S. Digital Service? It sounds very important, but I'm afraid I don't know exactly what it is.
No problem. It has made a lot of headlines recently as it figures out where it sits with Elon Musk's Doge, but not getting into present day.
Yeah.
The quick version is, if you rewind back to the Affordable Care Act, it was really the first piece of legislation in history that was nearly a failure because of the technology under it. So, rewinding a bit, but if you remember, once the ACA was passed, people then couldn't get health insurance because the website and none of the technology actually worked. And that was a unique moment in American history where policy was dependent on tech. So at the time, President Obama recruited a bunch of engineers, primarily from Google, and said, like, you have carte blanche, rebuild this thing so it works. That's what they did. And then the president had a pretty good bait and switch, which was, what if you guys stay, set up an agency within the executive office of the president, and go rebuild other government services to be as seamless as the ones we expect out of Silicon Valley? So, one of the things we talked about a lot when I was there was kind of this rallying cry of, if I can buy a book in 2 clicks on Amazon, why does it take a veteran 1,000 clicks and 10 phone calls to get the healthcare rights that they earned serving this country. So it was really that vision of bringing design thinking and the best of technology into government was why that was founded.
That's such a powerful origin story, and then launch pad with the bait and switch there. So that seems like it's a great mission, but a challenging charge because there are so many moving parts of government and different means of approval. How do you make a dent in that in a meaningful way? Because if it doesn't work, then you do have a healthcare website and people know about it. And if it's seamless, we don't always hear much of anything.
Yeah, I mean that's the best state is you don't want to hear about it like that. That's exactly what we'd want. What's the expression? It's like, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like that's essentially how you tackle government. Like it was real culture shock for me when I joined, coming from startup life and Google of just bureaucracy and lack of speed and even cultural things like in tech there's less of a hierarchy and if you have a point you speak up, but in the government it was like, oh, you don't sit in that chair because you're this rank, like you should be sitting in that, things like that were different. At the end of the day it came down to finding areas of intersection between impacts a lot of people, problem that can be solved by technology, and problem that can be solved on a timeline that we believe is worth pursuing. So it kind of became the intersection of that as like the simple version was where can we do the most good for the most people and then just charging towards that as quickly as possible. It's not often easy. There's a lot of lowercase p politics involved, but that was kind of this idea of just being this SWAT team that could go in and say, like, we're going to work on this fire. Here's what we need. Here's the timeline, and here's how we're going to do it.
Good case sensitive answer.
Yes.
So to leave the past and zoom back to the present with an eye to the future, with so much in your kind of wheelhouse between VR, MR, the metaverse, all of the brands that you're talking about building, what's someone like you looking at off on the, I'm going to be case sensitive, lowercase h horizon
Yeah.
ahead?
There are a lot of things. I spend a lot of time looking backwards and a lot of time looking forward. Things I'm excited about looking to the horizon, I'd say one is I think there's a lot more openness to risk and humor and personality in advertising again. I think we're coming out of a 5-year period, give or take, of everyone just kind of shipping wallpaper, trying to appease everyone and every point of view with everything. So that's something I'm particularly excited about. It's completely cliche, and I feel the same way I do about any tool or technology. Like it's not the answer, it's not the solution, but AI, have to mention, is like a super interesting thing that can scale how we measure, can scale how we create, can change our workflows. Like I'm bullish not on it as a replacement for marketers or for agencies, or again the way that I think that it's framed in clickbaity headlines, but as a tool I think it becomes a very interesting thing for us to leverage. And the third thing I'd say is smart partnerships. I've been really inspired by brands like Netflix with like the launch of Squid Game, who didn't just plaster the logo everywhere, but it just seemed like they had a smart partnership everywhere, from technology brands to ice cream brands and everything in between. It's a big place where I've tried to take a lot of our marketing. We have a close partnership with the NBA. We struck a partnership this year with Wrexham, the Welsh football club owned by Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney. So trying to tell stories together with partners who work similarly to you and you can find overlap is something I get quite excited about as well.
I love that. Well, a lot of it made me smile, and it is now my turn, Dave, to get to ask you for a brand that has made you smile recently.
Uh, there are probably Two, if I'm allowed to cheat.
Cheat away.
I mean, I'm a marketer on a podcast. Do I have to say Liquid Death or Duolingo, or can I give someone else? Is that
I mean,
allowed?
it's been maybe a week or two since
No.
someone's mentioned them on the podcast.
There we go. Those aren't my answers. There are two. The first is CeraVe, which I can't think of what should be a more boring brand of like relatively mid-priced lotions, but they have been doing super interesting, scrappy influencer work and just like culturally smart work. I saw they had work with Anthony Davis when he got traded to the Mavericks. They're doing, clever, silly work with Michael Cera because of the similarity in their names. Like, to
That's
me, it's just a
right.
good reminder of not every piece of marketing needs to save the world or be a pontificating on some giant societal issue. Like, it's just smart marketing that builds a brand, builds recognition, and I have to imagine builds business results. The other I would give is Major League Baseball. I'm a big baseball fan. My first internship in college was working for the CMO of Major League Baseball, Jacqueline Parks, at the time. And it's just been such a stale brand compared to the other sports leagues for the last 10 years. When you think of baseball, you think of, I don't know, lots of white hair and lots of things from the past. But I thought they kicked off the season, it's a singular piece of work, but they had a great ad with a Kendrick Lamar track that just felt like, what league is this? What brand is this? That finally felt like they weren't trying to cling to the past and starting to like chart a course for what baseball in the future will look like. So those are two that stand out to me recently.
I love that. Great stories, great brands. Dave, where can folks go to learn more about who you are and what you do?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Dave Kaufman. You can go to meta.com and you'll see a lot of what we're building in Reality Labs. Uh, those are probably the two main places I'd point people to. I wrote an article last year on LinkedIn that made the rounds called How to Work in Marketing and Not Be Full of Shit. Am I allowed to curse? You can bleep it out if not, which was a list of resources that I wish everyone in marketing leveraged and used and ramped up on. And I guess I'm starting and ending with the same plea of education and marketing is important. Understanding strategy before tactics is important. And it's something as a field we should take pride in rather than rejecting, which seems to be more of the trend.
I was going to say maybe people will listen if the VR MR Metaverse guy says it.
Yeah, well, that was my long article on going back to the basics and making sure we actually understand what we're doing and why.
Awesome. Well, we will link up to that in our show notes, which folks can always find at onbrandpodcast.com. Dave Kaufman, thanks for being on brand with us.
Absolutely, it's great to be here. Thank you, Nick.
On Brand is part of the Marketing Podcast Network. If you like what you're hearing, if we've made you smile, you can always listen free on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite platform may be. And please take a moment and rate and review the podcast to help others find the show. Until next week, I'm Nick Westergaard, and I'll see you on the internet.